So the question is, how can we create a functional, comfortable home when we're moving as often as we are moving, right? And I mean we, me and you who's listening, not like me and like my family, because we're packing it up, right?
Hey there, and welcome to the Digital Nomad Family Podcast. This is the place where families who have or want to have a nomadic lifestyle come together to talk about the highs and lows that this life brings. We celebrate the joys and support each other in the hard. So, if you are a digital nomad family, or will be in the future, this is the place for you. We're glad you're here.
Hey guys, how is everybody doing? Marissa here. I am your host here on Digital Nomad Family Podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Really glad to have you. And I think this is going to be a fun place for you to start if you are just now listening. If you have been listening, welcome back. Glad that you're here again. And I just want to say a quick shout out to everyone who has been pushing that subscribe button. It has been really cool to see the amount of subscribers gone up since we've kind of started talking about it. I really appreciate it, guys. Like I said in a previous episode, it's not even that I necessarily, like me, Marissa, need it for my confidence or anything like that. I heard another podcaster say, and this is a dude who is very confident in himself, and I don't doubt this whatsoever. He said, I don't need it for me to sleep at night. I'm fine with who I am, but it really helps the algorithms see, hey, this is a show that people enjoy, they like. So every single time you subscribe to the show, you leave a rating or you leave a review, it really does help other people see it in their like for you categories, because then all these algorithms are going, oh, this is something that people enjoy. So if you haven't subscribed yet, I would love it if you did. That would be really helpful to just spread the word. Also, I think that this is going to be a really great series for you to share with someone who is also a traveler, or even just maybe they travel like for work a lot. I really think that this is going to be a really great series for anyone who is on the road, because what we are talking about is an idea of creating a home in a temporary place. So we're going to start, you guys know me, right? I love series. I think series are, if you look back on how many series we've done together, so many, right? But they really allow me to just hone in on one specific part of something, because otherwise I would just ramble. If we kept track on how many just rabbit trails I went down in one episode, it would be a very high number, I'm sure. So I really need a focused thing, or else I'm just going to talk. And so a series really helps me stay focused on one specific part of a topic. Otherwise, it's just like a volcano erupting, and it's just too much information to process. So we are in a series that I'm calling Roaming Residents. And what that is talking about is this idea of, as a digital nomad, our home changes. We don't have one space. For me and my family, we don't even own any real estate. So it's not even like we have a place back in the United States that we're subletting or renting out or Airbnb. No, we don't have a quote unquote home. And so every single time we move, that is home. And so the question is, how as a family can we create a home for our kids, for ourselves, for our marriage? How can we create that space that it is 100% fair to long for? How do we create that in every single location? And the hard part about it is we don't want to spend loads of money, right? Like if you had an unlimited bank account, or you were just able to do whatever you wanted to in a space, well then sure, go ahead and go buy every single throw pillow you want, change the curtains, go buy the plates that you think are pretty in that location, go buy some decorations. You could, right? But realistically, we're not going to do that. So the question is, how can we create a functional, comfortable home when we're moving as often as we are moving, right? And I mean we, me and you who's listening, not like me and like my family. Because we're packing it up, right? We are actually, 12 days away? I feel like we're about 12 days away from me recording this to getting on an airplane and going to Costa Rica. Now, here's the fun thing about Costa Rica. I don't know how much I've told you guys, to be honest. It's all kind of running together. I'm going to a Spanish school in Costa Rica. Really, really excited about that. But we didn't pick our house. And so this school has relationships with local realtors and basically just locals that have houses, right? And they rent out their houses. And so we actually have yet to see any pictures of where we're going to be living. The landlady of the house we're moving into has been on vacation and she got back yesterday. So I am waiting to get her contact information so we can actually maybe kind of see some pictures of our house. That would be nice. But either way, it's only our house for about 14 weeks. Okay. We'll be there until about roughly not long after or before. We're not 100% sure yet, guys. American Thanksgiving. So then we're gone. So we're getting ready to move from this home in El Salvador to another home in Costa Rica. And the question that this series is going to answer is, how can we create a home as cheap and as fast as possible? Because when you're only in a home for 12 to 16 weeks, you don't have time to be like, oh, well, we'll just slowly make it work. No, you can't do that. It's like you have 1 or 2 trips to the grocery store or to the home goods store that you want to just be done. And so that's what this series is all about. It is going to be extraordinarily practical. And because that's just how we roll here, right? We don't roll in hypothetics. We roll in the real life, nitty-gritty, practical things. And I am really excited because, how many times do I say really excited? I apologize, guys. I'm looking forward. Now I'm trying to think of something different to say. I am glad. I don't know. I'm just excited because I have created what we will be referring to as the Settling In Guide. And this is a resource that is available. If there's a link to it in the, that you can click on the link and it'll send you over to how you can get it. And it is for sale, but it's extremely cheap. So we're talking very, very less than a cup of coffee. Well, depending on where you are, I guess. Here in El Salvador, it would be less than a cup of coffee. Have I told you guys that El Salvador is not the cheapest place to live? It's just not. But, oh well, not a big deal. So it is available. And what we're going to be doing is working through different sections of this Settling In Guide, but not 100% of it. So if you like what we talk about and just the tips and the practical ideas that you get in this series, if you enjoy those, there's even more in the Settling In Guide. So like if I give a list, I'm not going to give 100% of the list here on the podcast. You will have to go over and grab your Settling In Guide. Again, it's not expensive. But I really am excited about this guide. I think it's really helpful. And I think it's going to maybe just give you guys some ideas of how to set up your own life, because that's my big thing. What works for my family isn't going to always work for your family. But I have really thought through, okay, what are just some family important items that are needed in a home? And so that's what the Settling In Guide is. So what we're going to be talking about today in this episode is what I'm calling a space check-in, meaning a home check-in. You first walk in the door of that new apartment or new house, and what do you do? And everyone is going to have a few different items that they really hope to see, but there are, I think, some generals and some typical things, if you will, that a family, and again, we're talking families, this is Digital Nomad Family Podcast. That's why I love having a podcast specifically for families. And so these are some things that I think you should look for. And so let's just kind of get in. I'm not going to be talking about the things that you will have learned before you got to your apartment. I'm not talking about, does it have a washing machine or a dryer? Not that. Does it have a dishwasher? Nope, not that. How many bathrooms? Nope, not that. Those are going to be the things, unless you're like me sitting here 13 days away from a house you've never seen pictures of. Typically, we know the answers to those kind of things. So it's not that. It's not, figure out the bedroom situation. It's not that. It's the smaller detail things that you want to make sure you check before you maybe make that first trip to the grocery store. And so I'm going to give a part of the list that's in the settling in guide. And what I would suggest, anytime we've been to a place and it doesn't have these items, I kind of do a quick think in my head, like, okay, is it required? How long am I going to be here? Do I have to have this? Is it practical? And if the answer is yes, I reach out to, we've always had Airbnb up to this point, or at least we found the person. Our apartment here in El Salvador, where we're staying here, we found it on Airbnb, but we're actually just privately renting it. And so we're not actually using Airbnb as the communication or as the money source, because that way we saved a little bit more by taking it off Airbnb. And so, but I still just reach out to the host and talk to her immediately on WhatsApp. So if in this list, it just, your apartment or your house doesn't have these things, just do a quick think in your head, do I need it? And is it reasonable to ask the host to provide it? I think there are certainly things that it's very fair to reach out to your host and say, hey, the apartment doesn't have this and we really need it. Would you, and then just give the option, would you be able to get it to us by, and then give a day, the end of tomorrow, the end of this weekend, whatever, depending on what it is. Or if we buy it, can we send you a receipt and then we deduct that from next month's rent and you kind of use it as a credit. We've done that in this Airbnb and we did it in Mexico. And so there's definitely ways that you can figure that out with your host. So that's what I would do. And the reason that I have this before you go shopping is some of these things you're going to want to make sure that you have, so then you can figure out how to get them. When you go to the first grocery store, you can have a list here and you can be going, okay, we need this. Does this grocery store have it? Do we have to find a different place that gets it? So just these are things that I think it's really good to check on very soon into the getting into the apartment phase, okay? So pots and pans. Does it have all the pots and pans that I need? For us, we like to have 2 skillets and like medium to large skillets. I think that's very fair, like especially if the host has promoted this as a long-term available stay for larger groups. That's a very fair thing. So we like to have 2 medium to large skillets, and then we like to have a large pot that we can like boil water in for mashed potatoes, spaghetti, soup, whatever, but a larger pot. So that's kind of in my head what I need. You're going to have to think what you need. Maybe you don't really use that many skillets, or I don't know, maybe you're not going to use a big pot. Maybe you don't eat pasta. We eat pasta a lot. And so we definitely need a large pot to boil water in. The next thing that I always look for is a cutting board. And I also look at the state of the cutting board. If it's a wooden cutting board that just looks disgusting, I'm going to send a picture of it to the host and I'm going to say, hey, this looks like it has seen better days. How about we get a new one? And I just start there. If it looks fine and I'm like, hey, whatever, not a big deal, great. I only need one cutting board. I love it when there's two, but I can function with one. If you have to have two cutting boards and the Airbnb has, or your apartment has one, but you like two, I personally think that's a personal preference, and I wouldn't ask the Airbnb or the host to buy another one, but it's not going to kill the bank to go buy a $3 cutting board, right? Just like a cheap little thing. But just look for that. Like how many cutting boards do I like to have? The next thing is a good knife. And this is so hard because short-term stays like what we're living in are notorious for terrible knives. It's just how we roll. And so having a knife sharpener traveling with you can be a really great idea. I have a link to one in the show notes if you are like, hey, I'm not going to go buy a knife every single place I am, but I will spend a little bit of money. It's not expensive. I will buy a knife sharpener and I'll just throw that in my bag, and then I'm able to sharpen the knife whenever I get to the next location. I think that's a genius idea. I learned that from someone else, and I totally stole it. Don't remember who I learned it from, but it is not original to me. But I think it's genius. The next thing I look for is a broom and dustpan. The amount of Airbnbs that don't have a dustpan is shocking. And I'm like, where does the dust go? We gotta sweep it up and out. So I look for a broom and a dustpan. Then I look for a mop or some type of Swiffer, like that idea. And if there's carpet, I look for a vacuum. I think we've only been in one with carpet. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think just one with carpet, and it didn't have a vacuum. That was frustrating. And the host was not open to buying a vacuum, and I wasn't going to buy a vacuum out of my own money. The host solution was to sweep it with a broom. So I was sweeping carpet with a broom. Yes, you can feel that. You know what I lived in that. It was not nice. So a dustpan and a broom, and then a mop or mop equivalent, whatever. I'm fine. And with that, for me, it just comes down to availability, not personal preference. If there is a mop there for the tile and a bucket, then okay, that's what I'm going to do. That's how it was in Santa Rosa for us. We had all tile floor, and it was just a very traditional type mop. And I don't love mopping in that traditional way, but it was supplied, it was there. And I think if I wanted to have gone out and purchased like a Swiffer idea, that'd have been fine. The host wouldn't have cared, but I wouldn't have asked her to buy one because she supplied a mop. And so that's kind of what I mean by personal preference. The next thing, very important, enough forks, spoons, and knives. If you know you're going to be hosting people, you kind of need to make the decision, is it worth buying a few like metal cutleries so that way when people come over we have enough, or I know I'm just going to have to buy disposables. We tend to just end up buying some metal ones because so we're a family of 6. And it is really, really common for Airbnbs to only supply 4 or 6 sets of cutlery. That is what we have found as kind of the normal, quote unquote, normal amount. And so I always end up just going out and buying like 4 more forks, a couple more spoons, just to have in the house because I don't want to do dishes constantly. And when you have 6 people in the house and you only have 6 forks, they're always dirty. And so I suck it up and I'm like, you know what? Technically they have supplied enough forks. I just like to have a few extra. So I look at how many forks and spoons and knives there are. And I tell myself, okay, sometimes you can find like, if there's like in the United States, we call them dollar stores, and Mexico City had them. Here we have them. In San Salvador, we have them. And you just pop into one of those places and you can usually find cutlery if you're pretty cheap. I just buy the cheapest ones. And so I know that for us, we like to have more than 6 forks and we like to have more than 6 spoons. Knives, my kids don't really like to use knives, so I don't really care about knives. And by knife, I mean like a butter knife or like a table knife, that idea, not like a cutting knife. And so how many do you need? If you are a family of 3 and you get to your apartment and there's 7 forks there, you're probably okay. But if you get there and there's 4, maybe you're like, oh man, we really like to have 6. Then pop out and, add that to your list for when you pop out and hey, we got to grab a few more forks. The next thing I look for is baking dishes, cookie sheets, and definitely I would like to have a 9x13 pan, like a 9x13 baking dish. But if they don't have one and they have other baking dishes, I'll try to make it work. But in my experience, even if your host, even if you have an oven in your Airbnb, which ovens are not universal, they are not. Even if you have an oven, you might not have any bakeware. So check on that. Do you have things that can actually go into the oven? If not, I do think it's extremely fair to ask your host to at least buy one 9x13. Get glass. Just do it. Just get glass. Aluminum or any type of metal, it's just going to get scratched. I don't care how careful you are. It's just going to. And so just get glass, be done with it, because then when you leave in 3 months, it still looks just as good. And it's if you have a metal one and you ding it up a little bit, well, the host could very well send you a message after you've left and they go, hey, we bought this and you totally ruined it. Well, I mean, it got scratched, yeah, because it's Teflon, and I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe I am not adult enough to understand Teflon, but guys, I ruin it. And I don't know why, but I only like glass baking dishes. I can keep those just fine and nice and clean and pretty, but a metal one, no, I just don't like it. So go glass. The last thing, this is not the last thing on the list in the settling in guide, but it is the last thing I'm going to talk about here on the podcast, is a large mixing bowl. It is so annoying when I go to make things like mashed potatoes or if I want to make some biscuits. Last night for dinner we had biscuits and gravy. If I want to make some biscuits up, if I want to just make pancake batter, it is so frustrating to not have a nice large mixing bowl to be able to mix all that up really, really easily. And so I always look for a large mixing bowl anywhere we go. So those are kind of the things I look for. Now, I know you might be thinking, Marissa, that's just all kitchen stuff. I know it is, but the bedrooms, you're going to have known what they were like before you got there. You're going to have known some overall things. There are a few things on the list that are not in the kitchen, but again, you're going to have to go over and grab a copy of the settling in guide. But I do think the kitchen is the number one location where you need to look for things before you go on that first shopping trip. Like I said, I do have a couple items on this list in the settling in guide that are out of the kitchen, but I do think the kitchen is the biggest, alarms going off, oh no, we don't have this. Once you get to this space and you start looking at it, those are the biggest things. I do encourage people, if they're able to, if you have a little bit of wiggle room in your bags. For us, that's always hit or miss. Some trips, I feel like, oh, we did really well. The space is going great. We have extra room, right? And then at some trips, you're like, where did all this new stuff come from? I have no idea what's happening, and we need to have a yard sale out of our bags. And so it just depends on how I feel our bags are. But if we have a little more space in our bags, there are 3 things that I definitely try to bring, just so then I don't have to re-buy them. And they are Ziploc bags. So like, let's say I just purchased some Ziploc bags and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do try to get them into the bags. I just take them out of the box and just lay them randomly in, because I'm always going to use Ziploc bags. And if I can get them to the next house, that's going to make settling in so much easier, because I know, okay, I have Ziploc bags to begin. Another thing is trash bags. Same idea. I might not take all of them out of the box, but I'll grab like 3 or 4 if I can and put them randomly in our luggage, just so that when we get to the new house, it's like, okay, at least we have some trash bags to get us started before we get that first grocery trip. And then the last thing is aluminum foil or plastic wrap. Be very careful with this, because if you are traveling with just carry on, they might get frustrated with you because of that sharp metal edge. So what I would do is I would just take the rolls out and just put them in your bag. And that way you have some plastic wrap and aluminum foil when you get to your new place. And again, even if you want to just like tear off a nice large strip and fold it, and like you can put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in someone's bag. That way you just have a little bit to get you started at the next house. Okay, so that is it. That's going to kind of end this space check-in for this first episode in our new series here. So I hope that it was helpful. I have moved my family many, many times. I think we're around the 20 time mark, give or take. Yeah, we're around 20 for moving from house to house to house. So the idea of a roaming residence is not novel to me whatsoever. I totally understand it. And so I hope that this list just kind of encouraged you to kind of think, okay, what do we want in our space? And like I said, the whole point of the settling in guide is going to be to give you one space to keep everything that you want. So then it's not new every single time you get to a new home. It's just, okay, I'm going to open this and I'm going to check. Do I have this? Do I have this? Do I have this? Do I have this? And in the settling in guide, we have space for you. You can write on, like you can open it in an app that you can write on, like GoodNotes or something. And you can even create your own list. Like, okay, before I do that going to the first grocery store, I want to do this. I want to ask the Airbnb host this. As we continue on, there's going to be some questions that I think you should ask for every single new location you move into. And there's space for you to write the answers to the questions each time. So then you can just pull up the guide and be like, okay. And then you can just erase it and have it for the next one, ready to go. That way it's not something new every single time. But I'm really hopeful that as you guys work through this and as we continue on with this series, you'll see how helpful a resource like this can be when you're moving so often, because so much of our mental energy can go into doing the same thing multiple times, and it doesn't have to be that way. We can have things like this where, okay, the list is already done. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode, on the podcast as a whole. So pop over and leave a review. That would be cool. I'd appreciate it. So yeah, that's it, guys. I hope that you guys are doing well. I so soon I'll be telling you, hey, I'm in Costa Rica, getting ready to go to Spanish school. So that's really exciting. Cannot wait for that. So yeah, I hope that you all are doing well, that your families are doing well, and that you are all traveling joyfully.